Oh my god. I gotta tell my therapist about this. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel, and today we are reviewing Backrooms, directed by Kane Parsons, starring Chiwetel Ejiofor, Renate Reinsve, Mark Duplass, Bennett, and Lukita Maxwell. This movie follows the owner of a furniture store who discovers the seemingly endless liminal space known as the Backrooms, along with the entities that reside inside by no-clipping through a wall in the basement of his store. And I'll of course be getting to spoilers for Backrooms, as there are a ton of things to analyze with this film, so if you haven't had a chance to watch it just yet, definitely go check it out, as this is the most mainstream internet horror has ever been. And if you've been following the creepypasta or games over the years, you are bound to be rewarded.
Alright, just take it slow.
The concept of the Backrooms is something that I've heard about here and there over the years, seeing various disquieting and uncomfortable images online, or seeing brief clips from the games or short films that I now realize were largely amplified by this creator named Kane Pixels. And in a filmmaking landscape where we've seen YouTubers like the Philippou brothers, Chris Stuckman, Mark Fishbach, and Curry Barker make the jump to the big screen, it's pretty inspiring to see someone as young, and more importantly, as deeply involved in the expansion of the Backrooms lore, being the leading creative voice behind the Hollywood version of this concept. Inspiring enough to where I made a whole ass short film before this video. And you really don't have to go back too far to see Hollywood take a popular IP, whether it originated online, in comics, or through video games, throw in some reliably safe filmmaker and a semi-related screenplay, produce it for cheap to take advantage of the fan base who'd go out in droves only to inevitably be disappointed in the final product they see on screen. So it really is a miracle that this Backrooms movie exists in the fashion that it does. Kane Parsons was given the opportunity to make a feature-length version of his much beloved YouTube series, filled with the same homemade techniques he used for his no-budget shorts, and plenty of references to the lore that only his hardcore fanbase will appreciate. And this all largely works to this film's benefit. The opening scene of this film is exactly what you see from his work on YouTube, which is a great starting point to get the audience accustomed to what the Backrooms really are. We see a man in a hazmat suit from the Async Research Institute navigate the endlessly echoing halls, running from some entity hidden in these shadows before it does inevitably get a hold of him. It's a maze that is largely reminiscent of an old office building from the 90s that makes no real architectural sense, with every corner leading to a new room that you wouldn't generally expect. The movie does a great job at describing the Backrooms through this metaphor, saying to imagine trying to describe a dog to someone who had never seen one before, and then asking them to draw it. That the Backrooms themselves and the things that reside inside are memories of a memory, a distant echo of every place ever built, clipped together and stripped to its basics. This is not the type of horror with jump scares around each of these corners. It's the kind that places you in an uncanny environment and gets under your skin through the eerie and off-putting atmosphere within the location itself. Every single backroom sequence, from this opening scene to every single sequence you see as Chiwetel Ejiofor's Clark explores further, holds this great sense of tension that I absolutely loved, with Kane Parsons and Ido van Bremen's score elevating the atmosphere to an entirely different level. Clark's initial discovery of the Backrooms through a hidden doorway in his furniture store's basement was really engaging, but his second venture inside, where he brings his employee and her boyfriend with a camera along, ended up being the standout sequence in the entire film. Between this and Chris Stuckman's Shelby Oaks, analog horror is back in great fashion, and if I were to point to any individual sequence inside of this movie that is the scariest, this would definitely be the one. With the added bonus of Kat and Bobby being incredibly funny as they skeptically go along with Clark's newly found obsession.
You still haven't told us what we're doing here, man.
Oh no, don't do it!
Our main characters who we follow as they become more enraptured by these mysterious halls are Clark and his therapist Mary, played by Renate Reinsve. And if you watch my review for Exit 8, which I actually watched after I watched this film at a test screening several months back, I said that that film did a great job at tying the themes and arcs for its characters to the concept of the Exit 8 game. And I can see that Kane Parsons and writer Will Sudik had a very similar approach with these characters as well, though to a lesser degree of success. Clark is struggling with a recent separation from his wife after he was kicked out for being a reckless and angry drunk, blaming anyone and everyone for his problems other than himself. Mary's attempts to break through to Clark include her telling him that people build up walls in their lives, constructs that hold them in a cycle that repeats over and over again, and that he, along with Mary in her own personal life, which I'll get into momentarily, need to break through these barriers they found themselves in to truly be free. And you can see how this idea somewhat relates to the Backrooms as a concept, but in classic A24 fashion, I don't think these arcs between both Clark and Mary are too accessible to most people who will watch this film. And I say this including including myself, as I felt very cold and distant to both of these characters after I first watched this at the test screening months ago. And now watching it again here tonight, I think I have a greater appreciation for what they were going for with these characters after I was able to really dive into and analyze what these characters and the arcs mean in the larger scheme of this story. Chiwetel is great at playing this man who is desperately seeking out answers to all his problems via external sources. His roleplay arguments with Mary were one thing, but the times you see him alone in his store at night, fighting with his CRTV and breaker box, show his frustrations and why someone like this, who has no real life outside of his routine, would become so obsessed with the backrooms and the entities that exist inside. It's the opposite of the well-defined and structured life he had or failed to get as an aspiring architect. The construct of these backrooms are not structured. They are inherently mysterious and is an external source for him to endlessly explore rather than looking inward at himself as the real problem. And with the entities inside the backrooms mimicking those that enter, similar to how the halls themselves look like echoes of real-world locations, Clark's entity is violent and reckless. Contrasting Clark is Mary, who in a similar way is dwelling on her past and is in need of breaking through the constructs that were instilled on her from her precarious relationship with her mother. Mary's backstory is much less defined and is the most A24 aspect of this movie. We only see it through her dreams, brief images of her home covered in trash and newspapers blocking every single window, confining her to her mother's fears of going out to the real world for whatever reason she might have had. Mary is still holding onto a piece of her handprint pressed down into the concrete of her childhood home after it was torn down, and even though this place that she was once confined to is now demolished, she still feels trapped in a similar state of confinement with her current life and routine. And hey, maybe I'm overthinking this all, but this is A24 and they chose to be vague here, so don't be mad if I'm overanalyzing this therapist, who in all honesty just probably needs her own therapist. So when Clark goes missing after leaving a cryptic voicemail behind and rambling on about this place he discovered in her last session with him, she discovers the backrooms for herself while searching for him. And this is where we get the full reveals in the film, which I think might split a ton of people who watch this film. The backrooms thrives off of its mystery and uncanny nature, so to explain it away in any manner will undoubtedly disappoint some viewers. And one of those things that is explained here are the entities that reside inside of the backrooms. Similar to the halls themselves, they are mimics of things in the real world, as they look like uncanny memories of people who had been inside before. A distorted man in a wheelchair, or a man with cascading sets of eyes, or a woman with faces repeating vertically across her head. They even move similarly to how Nikki moved in Obsession, although not as uncanny and horrifying as that film, but they certainly are unsettling to look at. And the main entity that has been looming around the corners, chasing after Clark, is a version of him, dressed as the pirate sultan of the Ottoman Empire, or the mascot of the store as seen in the hilariously accurate 90s era commercials he made. And this is where the movie kind of lost me a little bit. I dug the performances in Clark and Mary's therapy session within the backrooms after Clark ties her up. The way he interacts with these entities so casually led to some really creepily funny moments that I loved, but again, these character arcs aren't as clearly defined and some are a bit more metaphorical than the mainstream audience this movie is reaching out to can possibly handle. Clark, having failed to break through the barriers in his life, preventing him from seeing himself as the problem, has gotten him in this situation, and by the time he finally admits it by the ending of this scene, his entity barges in and begins to eat him. Yeah, weird stuff. And sadly, the design of Clark's entity felt a little bit silly to me, where the film's eerie atmosphere had me wanting something a bit scarier as the film's final villain. Take the bacteria entity from Kane Parsons' short film, for example, as something that is truly formless and unsettling in its design that feels a bit more fitting as it stands out against the backdrop of the mundane office aesthetic than what we see here in this film. I get the intent and the added lore we get here of explaining away these entities in the way that they do, and I do think that the design of them is really interesting to see, and I love the effort in creating this practical monster for the film, but it didn't quite scare me. But hey, here's to hoping that it scared you more than it did me. Mary, having more fight in her, is able to make a run for it, leading to some truly incredible sets of neighborhood facades, and opening with endless levels leading downwards to a confined version of the furniture store within the backrooms themselves. One element that I haven't fully explored yet in this video is the involvement of the Async Research Institute and the larger lore of the backrooms that has been established by Kane Parsons in his YouTube series, who've been leaving these audio recordings playing from some random cutouts of a caveman, which I love the fact that some theaters are leaving little cavemans inside of the hallways as this little cardboard cutout. Absolutely love that. And these aren't necessarily explained, but I think that they're here to lure in the entities that reside inside of the backrooms via these audio recordings to get them on camera, or in the case of this film's endings, to incapacitate them with gas for further research in the real world. Mary stumbles upon one of these traps with the gas failing to stop Clark's entity, but because for some reason she had somehow been carrying around this concrete handprints around this entire time, don't really know where she had it, she's able to bash it against the head of the entity, not only breaking free from this thing, but also breaking free from the past that she is held onto. metaphors. Mark Duplass plays an agent named Phil who we've seen here and there investigating Clark and how he was able to enter the Backrooms in the first place. Upon watching a film theory video about the Backrooms lore, which I highly recommend, it seems as though Async managed to create a stable portal into the Backrooms where they can continue to research and experiment on this dimension. So this is where the movie ends. Async is able to get Mary out and is also able to retrieve the body of this entity that she was able to incapacitate at the ending of this movie. Mary may have broken free from her past confinement, but now finds herself being questioned by Phil about her experience, held in custody by the Async Research Institute, unsure if she can ever leave. And as she is unable to fully explain the unexplainable Backrooms, we cut to some more disquieting images of the eerie yellow halls, eventually landing on a shot of Mary's entity, sitting alone in a room reminiscent of the interrogation room, mimicking her character flaws of being closed in and unable to break free. So overall, the Backrooms is filled with intriguing concepts and characters, but at times it struggles to fully let the audience in to piece together the film's intent and story. It took me 2 viewings to fully get a grasp on this movie, and I did enjoy it much more the second time around, but hey, that feels very fitting for the concept of the Backrooms in the first place. And despite the excellent first half that I absolutely loved with its take on analog horror, the film also had a slower pace with its runtime that felt a little bit overlong, with a final entity design that didn't quite work for me, leading to the scary nature of this film slipping away a bit by the ending. Also, I absolutely have to mention the glowing green room. Really fun Easter egg for those highly invested in the lore for the Backrooms. It did not go unnoticed by me. Don't really know what it means, but hey, it's in there.
Hello?
But those are just going to be my thoughts on Kane Parsons' Backrooms. Are you going to go back and explore these cryptic halls once more, or was one journey into the Backrooms more than enough? Let me know in the comment section down below, and as always, if you did enjoy this review, make sure to leave it a like and subscribe to the channel to see more reviews just like this one. And this also concludes the excellent May we just had, filled with so many fascinating horror films. Obsession still maintains the status as my favorite horror film of the year thus far, but Hokum and Backrooms are right up there along with it. So thanks everyone for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one.